Welcome to Liberty and Gun Rights Podcast, episode 29. Today is Saturday, June the 29th, 2024. My name is James Moffitt, and I'll be your host. So, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the presidential debate. There it is. It's the elephant in the room. I'll let the cat out of the bag, right? If you're like me, you watched snippets of it. Maybe some of you were able to sit through the entire 90 minutes or 2 hours. I forget how long it was. I was at work and doing my second job, 3 to 11, working as a security officer at the Charleston Center downtown. Well, not downtown, but in North Charleston. And somebody mentioned to me about the presidential debate, and I had forgotten all about it. And I had heard that it was coming, that it was going to happen, and President Biden and former President Donald Trump were going to talk about campaign issues and where they stood on those campaign issues, yada, yada, yada. Now, at the beginning of this podcast episode, I'm going to say that I know that you, the listening audience, probably already have your decision made as to who you're going to vote for whatever reasons, right? This is America, and part of our right and responsibility as American citizens is to vote in the November election for the President of the United States. And as it has been said, if you don't vote, you don't have any reason to complain, right? You have a right and a privilege and a responsibility to go vote. So, what is our homework, right? Our homework is to hopefully get past the rhetoric, hopefully get past the name calling, hopefully get past the innuendos and the smear campaigns on both sides. I am personally disappointed that the best the Republican Party can come up with for a presidential candidate is Donald Trump. And bear with me. I know a lot of you are MAGA supporters. I get that. I was a MAGA supporter. Or a Donald J. Trump supporter back in 2016. I did vote for him. That was my vote. And that was my vote because I figured he was the best of two evils, right? I did not want Hillary Clinton to become the president. And I know a lot of you are Biden supporters. And I know that it just blows my mind that the best the Democratic Party can do, the best they can come up with for the President of the United States for 2025 is Joe Biden. He's the best. That's the best that they can offer. And I personally feel that as a nation, we're really in trouble if that's the best. If those are the two choices that we have for President of the United States, we're in deep trouble. And why do I say that? Well, just off the top of my head, I would say that both of these people, both of these presidents, made lots of campaign promises back in 2016 and back in 2020. And neither one of these presidents, neither one of them were able to successfully execute those promises. And I know that perhaps both of those presidents, Biden and Trump, made promises that they were unable to keep because it wasn't within their power individually to make those promises happen, right? It takes a village, right? And That's why we have a Congress. That's why we have a House of Representatives. And that's why we have a balance of power, right? And so the President of the United States is not a dictator. They are not in a position of total power to where what they say goes and there's nothing anybody can do about it. You can look at Cuba, you can look at Russia, you can look at North Korea, you can look at a lot of socialist republics that do have dictators. Now, listen, I am not a political analyst. I don't necessarily understand all of the inner workings of the Congress or the House of Representatives or the White House or the three different, you got the legislature, you have the executive branch, you've got the judicial branch. There's three different main ones. I just named two of them. I don't, again, it's all about checks and balances. It's all about balancing the power amongst several different entities. And so the president, they can make grandiose promises, campaign promises while they're campaigning to get we the people on board to vote for them in the November election, right? And I get that. So I kind of want to get beyond like I said earlier, I want to get it beyond the name calling and the mudslinging and the political innuendos and all of that. And I respect you. If you want to vote for Donald Trump, then I respect that. You have your reasons for voting for Donald Trump, okay? If you want to vote for Joe Biden, I respect that as well. I know that Joe Biden has a lot of supporters, had a lot of supporters. Does he still have all of those supporters today? Does Donald Trump have all of those supporters that he had back in 2016 and 2020? I don't know. It would seem from looking at the media coverage, social media, NBC, CNN, all of the different media outlets, there's a lot of support for both candidates, right? And so, like I said earlier, our goal or our homework as United States of America citizens, as we the people, we need to cut through the garbage. We need to, all this noise, all this white noise that's surrounding both of these candidates. We need to get beyond that. We need to get past that. Earlier this year, I spoke briefly about Project 2025, right? Project 2025 is a real thing. It's the Republican Party's answer to the transfer of power in January of 2025. And they have been working on this for a long time, apparently. And they are implementing, they're training people and putting them in positions of influence so that Project 2025 can be implemented on day one. And I've been following Andrew Watkins and her coverage of Project 2025, and I don't know. Some of it's pretty scary, and even as a Christian, even as a former Republican, I'm not necessarily on board with what Project 2025 holds in store for these United States of America should Donald Trump win the presidency. That's something I would encourage you to dig into and to research for yourself. Don't listen to what I'm saying. Don't listen to what Andrew Watkins is saying, but Google it. Google is your friend. Project 2025. I would say that probably most of us listening to this are not going to be supportive of everything we read in Project 2025, right? So, anyway, The first presidential debate in 2024. Did you watch it? I have to be honest and say I was only able to watch 10-minute increments. And both, I don't know, President Trump and Joe Biden, or former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden, seem to be two dementia patients that were arguing over stuff. And President Trump, he would never answer the question. He went off on a tangent multiple times and went over his time allotment and just kept going on and on with his rhetoric, right? And President Joe Biden, he seemed to have a hard time focusing. He seemed to have a hard time staying on point. And he seemed to have a hard time answering the specific questions that were posed to him by the CNN correspondents. And it was pitiful. As far as I'm concerned, it was pitiful. And I think that most Americans, when it comes to the President of the United States, when they are addressing the people, or they're addressing Congress, or they're on a world stage, and there's some of these world summits, we don't want, or we would like to, we would want our presidents not to sound like blithering idiots, right? I mean, I can look back on few, on past presidents, and I'm just going to land on Barack Obama, right? Did I like Barack Obama as a person? No, not really. Did I believe in all his political campaign promises and what he stood for or what he didn't stand for? Not necessarily. But one thing I can say about Barack Obama, he was a good orator. And when he spoke to the people, he could string sentences together coherently. He could talk to us and make sense, right? We might not have agreed with what he was talking about. We might not have agreed with his points. But at least he sounded intelligent, right? And I would hope that if you're within the sound of my voice and you're listening to this podcast, I would imagine that you're like me in that you would like our president, our future president, our current president, our future president, not to sound like a dementia patient when they're discussing points and discussing foreign policy or talking about climate change or gun control or education or immigration or any of those topics that they were supposed to be discussing and debating. That it was pitiful. I'm sorry. It was absolutely pitiful. That's my opinion, for whatever it's worth. So let's back up a little bit. What are the qualifications of being president? For being the president? A presidential candidate must meet the following criteria. National born citizen. The candidate must be a natural born citizen, which is generally interpreted to mean born in the United States. Okay, Joe Biden and Trump both check that checkbox, right? Age requirement. The candidate must be at least 35 years old. Well, Biden and Trump are both going to be well into their 80s during their 4-year term. So they check that box. Residency. The candidate must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. They check that box off, right? Interestingly, there are no other specific qualifications beyond these constitutional requirements. Notably, a criminal conviction does not automatically disqualify someone from running for president. In fact, former President Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts related to falsifying business records, yet he can still run for president. However, Congress or the states could pass a constitutional amendment or impeach and convict a candidate to prevent them from serving as president. Historically, and I didn't know this, in 1920, Eugene Debs campaigned for president from prison after being found guilty of sedition, although he wasn't a serious contender. So, there's a lot of scuttlebutt or conversation um, amongst the Trump supporters, or the Trump detractors, I guess you could say, the Democrats. Um, they are anticipating that former President Donald Trump will not only get convicted, but also be sentenced to jail time, maybe even prison. I mean, the jury's still out, right? There's many cases to be heard. Who knows what's going to happen between now and November 1st? I know that if you're a Democrat and you're a Joe Biden fan, you don't want Donald J. Trump to be president for whatever reasons. This is a good reason. Who wants to have a known felon, a convicted felon, holding the highest office of our nation, the President of the United States? I know, and I have heard that President Biden and the Democratic Party has weaponized the DOJ, and they have directly gone after Donald J. Trump in an effort to bring all of his criminal misdeeds to light and prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. I think that's probably a true statement. I mean, that's what I have heard, right? So their goal, by weaponizing the DOJ, if in fact that's what they did, is to prosecute Donald J. Trump and put him in a position that would keep him from becoming president. It would restrict him from becoming president. And I don't know if can you imagine what other countries, the citizens of other countries, are thinking right now. I mean, and logically, from a constitutional standpoint, is that who we really want to be president of the United States? A convicted felon? The most powerful leader in our land? Logically, I would say no. Absolutely not. Okay? Having said that, though, there are indications and evidence that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden conspired to do things that were highly illegal themselves, highly unlawful. And what's to say that our current president, Joe Biden, is guilty of criminal activity himself, right? So whether the DOJ goes after him, while he's in office, I don't think that's going to happen. So it's kind of a everything's on tilt against Donald J. Trump, apparently. I don't know. I don't have a conclusive statement on that. I don't. I'm like you. I have to depend on mainstream media, who is putting their individual spin on all of this stuff. So what are the responsibilities of the president? Commander-in-Chief is number one. The president is the highest-ranking military officer and oversees the armed forces. They make critical decisions related to national security and defense. They are the ones that have control of the nuclear football, the one that contains launch codes. do we really think that President Joe Biden or President Donald J. Trump have the mental facilities to have that kind of decision making power? Uh, oh, good grief. No, 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 and no. Absolutely not. Having said that, these presidents, President Hopeful and President, they are surrounded by military leaders and political advisors and national security advisors and experts in their own individual fields that provide the president with hopefully good information so that they can make those kind of decisions, right? Number two, chief executive. The president manages the executive branch of the federal government. This involves enforcing laws, appointing officials, and overseeing agencies. Chief diplomat. The president represents the United States in foreign affairs. They negotiate treaties, meet with foreign leaders, and shape the country's international relations. Legislative role. While Congress makes laws, the president plays a role in shaping legislation. They can propose bills, sign them into law, or veto them. Economic stewardship. The president influences economic policies, budgets, and trade agreements. They work with Congress to address economic challenges. Crisis management. During emergencies, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, etc., the pandemic, that's a good example, the president coordinates responses and provides leadership. Judicial role. The president appoints federal judges, including Supreme Court justices, impacting the judiciary's direction. President Trump appointed 3 different Supreme Court justices that are or were or are conservatives. They hold conservative viewpoints. Symbolic leadership. The president represents the nation's values, unity, and aspirations. They participate in ceremonies and address the public. So that is the responsibilities of the president. And I wanted to kind of delve into that and kind of break that down and maybe hopefully it would serve as a reminder of what exactly were the responsibilities of the person that we're voting for in November. Commander-in-Chief, Chief Executive, Chief Diplomat, Legislative role, Economic stewardship, Crisis management, Judicial role, Symbolic leadership. I can't tell you how many times I've seen social media posts that say, I sure wish we could have some more mean tweets and cheap gasoline. We want more mean tweets and cheap gasoline. Granted, during President Trump's administration, the cost of gasoline did go down. And God forbid, we couldn't get that guy, nobody could get him to stop tweeting. I'm sure a lot of his advisors were like, just stop the tweets, stop tweeting. And he'd tweet about anything. Social media, I don't know. I guess he had, he's the most powerful person in the American government. I guess if he wanted to tweet at 2 o'clock in the morning, then so be it, right? He had just as much right to send out tweets as anybody, I suppose. I just kind of find that funny. Yeah, we all want cheap gasoline. Amen. Don't get me wrong. I don't like paying exorbitant prices for gasoline, for fossil fuel, because we all know that we're dependent upon OPEC, Saudi Arabia, and et al. All those countries over there that are in control of a majority of the oil and fossil fuels around the globe. And good old America, United States of America, we import a lot of that. we're dependent upon the oil from those countries, and depending on the price of a barrel of crude oil is going to be dependent upon how much we pay at the pump, right? I think in Charleston right now we're paying right around $2.99 a gallon. If you are a member, if you've got a membership with Parker's or I want to say Kmart, but that's not it. Circle K, that's it. Circle K, Parker's, Sam's Club, BJ's Wholesale, Costco, all of the big box companies they sell gas and they give their members a discount, right? So we all certainly want cheaper gas. Okay. Now let's compare former President Trump with existing President Joe Biden. Trump promised his supporters everything. He didn't deliver on much of it. So, Trump promises his supporters everything. He didn't deliver on much of it. Now, this is an article from the Washington Post. Take that for whatever it is, right? They did the research. They said President Trump's term in office expired at noon Wednesday, and although he was never a broadly popular president, those who stuck by him have almost always cited a few things, among them that whatever warts exist, he tells it like it is, and that he delivered on what he promised. The former is undermined by his well more than 30,000 falsehoods as president. The latter is undermined by his record. Back when Trump won the presidency, the Washington Post's Jenna Johnson offered an indispensable look at just how much he had promised he would do as president. 282 items to be exact. It was, to put it lightly, a lot. Perhaps in large part because of his lack of political expertise, and perhaps in large part because of his showman persona and his willingness to just say, well, anything. His mouth wrote a lot of checks. His actions couldn't cash, so to speak. Now that Trump's presidency has come to an end, I decided to look back at Johnson's list to see where Trump's promises landed. Many of them are tough to pin down because of a lack of specificity, but most are easier to evaluate, and the number of broken promises far outnumbers the 31 by our count that he kept. Promises kept. Call the executives at the parent company of Carrier, an air conditioning manufacturer that is closing a plant in Indiana and moving to Mexico, and threaten to impose a 35% tariff on air conditioners imported into the United States. Trump predicts the company will say, "Sir, we've decided to stay in the United States." On a side note, a deal was struck before Trump took office, preserving 800 jobs in Indiana and leading Trump to hail the announcement as a sign of things to come. Although since then, many businesses have moved production out of Indiana and overseas. Leave the federal minimum wage at $7.25 per hour, which is already too high. Trump also promised to raise the minimum wage at another point, which is contained below. Renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement or withdraw from the deal under Article 2205. Side note, the deal was renegotiated as United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. On the first day in office, pull out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, President Obama's signature trade deal linking countries around the Pacific Rim. Trump did this in his first week, but not on the first day. Probably close enough. Immediately institute a hiring freeze on all federal employees to reduce the workforce through attrition. There would be exceptions for those in the military, public safety, and public health. Trump did so, but it was rescinded in April 2017. Order agency and department heads to identify all needless job-killing regulations and then remove them. Trump ordered such a review in 2017. Eliminate the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate, as no person should be required to buy insurance unless he or she wants to. The individual mandate in the legislation was repealed, although the broader law was not. preserve Medicare and Medicaid, but encourage states to root out fraud, waste, and abuse. Provide states with block grants of Medicaid funds to provide more freedom in designing programs to assist low-income citizens. Trump sought to allow states to receive Medicaid block grants via executive action. Tennessee recently became the first state to take advantage of that. Push the Food and Drug Administration to more quickly approve the thousands of drugs it is reviewing. Trump also wants to advance research and development in health care. For better or worse, he applied pressure on the FDA on coronavirus treatments and vaccines. End catch and release. Anyone who illegally crosses the border will be detained until they are removed from the country. This was still happening as of 2018, although the administration announced its official end in 2019, including implementing policies that led, among other things, to separating families. Reduce the number of legal immigrants because it is simply too large to perform adequate screening, and these immigrants could be taking jobs away from American workers. The number was sharply reduced, although Trump also promised to increase them at other points, as detailed below. As soon as he takes office, ask Congress to repeal the defense sequester that limited the military's budget. The process Trump was targeting, known as sequestration, I can't say the word, remains on the books, but since 2018 it has essentially been displaced by new spending bills, and the limitations are due to end after 2021. Strengthen the military so that it's so big and so strong and so great that nobody's going to mess with us. Trump has expanded military funding and nobody has messed with us during his 4 years, although that was also the case in previous presidencies. Keep the military prison at Guantanamo Bay open. It's still open. Get along with Russian President Vladimir Putin. I hope that we get along great with Putin because it would be great to have Russia with a good relationship. Trump would also look into lifting the sanctions imposed on Russia after its annexation of Crimea, Crimea, however you say that. Trump got along great with Putin, often to the consternation of U.S. officials, but he did not lift Crimea-related sanctions. Communicate with North Korea's Kim Jong-un about his nuclear program, which would mark a major shift in U.S. policy towards the isolated nation. I would speak to him. I would have no problem speaking to him. Trump also did this to the occasional consternation of said officials. Stand with the oppressed people of Venezuela yearning to be free. Be a true friend to Israel. Immediately ask the generals to present a plan within 30 days to defeat and destroy the Islamic State. Trump did this upon assuming the presidency. The caliphate has been essentially eliminated, although that builds upon progress from other prior administrations. Frequently use the term radical Islamic terrorism. This was a mainstay of Trump's public comments, although orders and his administration eschewed it. Others eschewed it. They didn't like it. Temporarily suspend immigration from some of the most dangerous and volatile regions of the world that have a history of exporting terrorism. Order the Department of State, Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice to develop a list of regions and countries to include. The list will likely include Syria and Libya. Trump effectively did this with his travel ban from several countries, including Syria and Libya. He also at times proposed a Muslim ban, which will be cited later. Rescind all environmental executive actions signed by President Barack Obama. Trump rescinded dozens of them. Oppose a common tax on fossil fuels use that could be used to reverse damage to the environment caused by the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. No carbon tax passed under Trump. One also failed under Obama. Revoke restrictions on new drilling technologies and support safe hydraulic fracturing to create millions of jobs. Lease more federal land for drilling, including vast areas of our offshore energy resources. Trump routinely expanded drilling and fracking. Pull out of the Paris Agreement, which was signed by 196 countries pledging to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Restore and protect the Florida Everglades, even though it's a rough-looking sight down there. The most recent budget signed by Trump last month included a record amount for the Everglades. Now, these are campaign promises back in between 2016 and 2020, right? That's what I'm talking about here. Create jobs and opportunities for African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Rescind Obama's executive actions related to gun control. He did that. I refuse to be politically correct. Pass on the president's annual salary of $400,000. I guess Trump didn't take a salary. I promise I'll never be in a bicycle race, that I can tell you. Trump criticized then Secretary of State John F. Kerry, who was injured while riding a bicycle amid the Iran negotiations. Trump lived up to this by all accounts. Promises broken. There's a whole list of them. Create at least 25 million jobs and be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. About 6.5 million jobs were created in Trump's first 3 years before the coronavirus pandemic set in. Even ignoring the losses since then, that wouldn't have been on pace for 25 million jobs, even if Trump had served 8 years. We will double our growth and have the strongest economy anywhere in the world. Grow the nation's economy by at least 4% per year, although Trump has also suggested he will boost growth to at least 6% per year, if not much higher. Excluding 2020, growth in Trump's initial 3 years in office was 2.5%. That was narrowly above that of Obama. Eliminate the $19 trillion national debt within 8 years by vigorously eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government, ending redundant government programs, and growing the economy to increase tax revenues. The debt grew to more than $26 trillion and was growing even before the pandemic. $26 trillion. Cut the budget by 20% by simply negotiating better prices or renegotiating existing deals. Implement the penny plan, which each year would reduce net spending by 1% of the president's year's total. Over 10 years, Trump says this would reduce spending by almost $1 trillion. Defense and public safety spending would be exempt. Completely repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with something terrific that is so much better, so much better, so much better. Sound familiar? Americans will have great health care at a fraction of the cost. The ACA, also known as Obamacare, wasn't repealed. And I also have to interject here, as I'm reading this, that the Affordable Care Act, I'm not really sure who it's supposed to be affordable for. There was a time that I didn't have health care insurance because I was not working for a company that provided it for me. And I checked into it. And there's a sliding scale depending on how much money you make. It depends on what you have to pay. And I mean, you might as well have Cobra. You know, Cobra is the insurance plan that companies offer for employees that are in between jobs, not working for their company and looking for, employment elsewhere. And so Cobra extends your health care insurance until you can find a better insurance solution, healthcare solution for you and your family. I don't know, Cobra is like $800 a month or something ridiculous. An amount of money that somebody that's unemployed certainly can't afford. And the Affordable Care Act was no more affordable than Cobra was. That's a personal side note from James Moffat, right? Anyway, make illegal immigration a memory of the past. Get Apple to start building their damn computers and things in this country instead of in other countries. Apple in 2019 moved Mac Pro production out of the United States to China. Well, Apple's not the only manufacturing company that has ever done that. Raise the federal minimum wage to $10 per hour, as $7.25 is too low and the minimum wage has to go up. I'm sure a lot of people that are still working at minimum wage would love that. Institute a lifetime ban on White House officials lobbying on behalf of the foreign government. Trump signed an executive order to this effect in 2017, but revoked it overnight. Going to be so presidential, you're going to be so bored. He might also quit tweeting. He did not make anyone bored, and he stopped tweeting only this month because he was banned from the platform. Ha! That's funny. I forgot about that. Twitter bans Trump's account, citing risk of further incident. There's a video on this, January 8th. Twitter on January 8th banned President Trump from its site, a punishment for his role in inciting violence at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. I would not be a president who took vacations. I would not be a president that takes time off, Trump said. He will make time for golf, but promised to always play with leaders of countries and people that can help us. Trump played golf more often than Obama, whom he often regularly criticized for playing too much, and he rarely did so with people of such stature. He also spent lots of time at his properties away from the White House. If I draw a line in the sand, I will enforce it. He threatened North Korea with fire and fury if it continued to threaten the United States, but despite cordial relations with Kim, the threats remained. Anyway, I could go on and on about this. And that's President Trump. Now let's go look at Joe Biden, right? President Joe Biden is asking for 4 more years in office to finish the job. But whether voters grant him that wish in 2024 will depend heavily on how well they think he did in keeping all his promises from 2020. And when it comes to promises, Biden sure made a lot. From defeating the pandemic to reviving the economy, safeguarding voting, and access to abortion, and reestablishing America's stature abroad, Politico reviewed some of candidate Biden's biggest pledges and evaluated how well President Biden followed through. Here's our verdict using the following scale: kept his promise, in progress, stalled, broke his promise. Combating COVID-19, grade, kept his promise. What Biden pledged: when I'm elected your president, I'm going to act, and I'm going to act on day one. Folks, we're going to act to get this COVID under control. I'm never going to raise the white flag and surrender. We're going to beat this virus. We're going to get it under control, I promise you. What was the promise, or what? I think the federal government, they said just 2 weeks. Stay at home. Quarantine yourselves at home. Stay at home for 2 weeks, and this thing will be beaten. So 2 weeks turned into 2 months, turned into almost 2 years, right? It went on forever. Unfortunately, lots and lots of people died. Biden rolled out a far-reaching plan to rein in the pandemic on his first day in office, prioritizing efforts to mass vaccinate the country and spark a rapid economic recovery that saw significant initial success. The administration suffered multiple setbacks in the following months, notably misjudging both COVID's ability to evolve and Americans' willingness to keep up the fight against the deadly virus. But Biden did manage to blunt the pandemic threat through multiple rounds of shots and treatments that have allowed most people to return to their pre-pandemic lives. Okay, let's see. Rebuilding the economy, what Biden pledged. We're going to invest in infrastructure, clean energy, and manufacturing, and so much more. We'll create millions of good-paying American jobs and get the job market back in the path of full employment. Politico said that he kept his promise. Ending gun violence. That's another big platform for the Democrats and Joe Biden. The grade they gave him was stalled. What Joe Biden pledged: no one needs an AR-15. I promise you I will get these weapons of war off the street again and out of our communities. What he's done: Biden oversaw passage of the most comprehensive gun safety legislation in nearly 3 decades. The only problem, it fell well short of taking the kind of decisive actions that he pledged to deliver on the campaign trail. And that's probably because he met a lot of severe resistance on this. The gun safety law passed in June 2022 made only limited improvements to background checks and did nothing to restrict access to assault weapons. And despite Biden's promise to ban those weapons in the aftermath of several mass shootings over the last year, he's made no progress towards convincing Congress to act. Access to assault weapons, AR-15s and AK-47s, semi-automatic weapons that are used for hunting and sports shooting are not weapons of war. They're not assault weapons. They're semi-automatic. You pull the trigger once, one round is fired. There's no burst mechanism where you can select burst and get 3 rounds to go off at once with one trigger pull. SWAT doesn't use them. The U.S. military doesn't use them. Good grief. Weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction, the hysteria. Oh, don't get me started. Anyway, the White House in the interim has issued a range of executive orders aimed at reducing gun violence. But even Biden himself recently admitted he's effectively powerless on the issue, saying he's gone the full extent of my executive authority to do on my own anything about guns. Restoring U.S. leadership abroad. He kept his promise on that, supposedly. As president, I will ensure that democracy is once again the watchword of U.S. foreign policy, not to launch some moral crusade, because it's in our enlightened self-interest. We have to restore our ability to rally the free world so we can once more make a stand upon new fields of action together to face new challenges. Let's see. Strengthening voting rights. The grade on that is stalled. What Biden pledged, one thing the Senate and the President can do right away is pass the bill to restore the Voting Rights Act. If they don't, I've been saying all along, it's one of the first things I'll do as president if elected. We can't let the fundamental right to vote be denied. Protecting access to abortion. In progress. What Biden pledged, we're in a situation where I would codify Roe versus Wade as defined by Cassie. It should be the law, and there's no reason why, if the Supreme Court makes the judgment that everybody's worried about, with these appeals going to the Supreme Court, that in exchange I would codify Roe versus Wade and Cassie. Well, we already know Roe versus Wade was overturned. Expanding health care. He kept his promise. Overhauling immigration policies. Broke his promise. What Biden pledged, we're going to restore our moral standing in the world and our historic role as a safe haven for refugees and asylum seekers, those fleeing violence and persecution. What he's done, in an approach that dismayed Democrats and immigration advocates, Biden maintained the strict Trump-era border policy known as Title 42 that has allowed the government to quickly expel migrants at the U.S.-Mexican border. The administration now plans to lift Title 42 next month, though there are few signs that Biden will significantly loosen his approach to immigration. A new policy rolled out earlier this year would largely prohibit migrants from applying for asylum at the southern border. Anyway. Tackling climate change, kept his promise. All of these are long-term projects and will require the administration to implement all the new policies and do it fast enough for them to have the necessary environmental impact to meet Biden's timeline. There are also lingering questions over how the White House will juggle its climate ambitions with ongoing fossil fuel projects. After Biden broke a commitment to halt drilling on federal lands, most notably by approving the Willow oil and gas project in Alaska. Anyway, this is all information that you can Google. Google's your friend. So let's look at Trump and Biden's stance on key issues. I'm looking at NBCnews.com, politics, 2024 election, Biden, Trump, stance, issues, policies, and presidential race, blah, blah, blah. You can Google it. Biden and Trump compare where they stand on key issues. This was put out May 15th, 2024. The 2024 presidential election will give voters a stark choice between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, two men who couldn't be further apart on a number of policies. Here's a look at where they stand on key issues. This is a specific review of those key issues, which I think is important for us. January 6th justice. As we all know, January the 6th, 2020, Trump stated that the election was stolen, and I don't know what all he said, but he said the election was stolen multiple ways, and he supposedly was instrumental in motivating his supporters running over running over Capitol Hill and doing what they did on January the 6th. And I will say that was pitiful. Really? Is that the answer? Wow. I don't agree with that. I certainly don't agree with what happened on January the 6th. I know that's going to be offsetting to some of my Second Amendment, my purist Second Amendment believers. But there, I said it. So President Biden has described the January 6, 2021 attack as a mob of extremists and terrorists who launched a violent and deadly assault on the people's house in the sacred ritual to certify a free and fair election. While he does not have a direct role in the prosecution of January the 6th rioters, his Justice Department appointees have overseen what has shaped up to be one of the largest investigations in American history, securing hundreds of convictions on charges ranging from misdemeanors to seditious conspiracy, as well as sentences ranging from probation to 22 years in federal prison for the leader of the Proud Boys. Here's President Trump. On January 6th, Trump called those who showed up at the Capitol very special in a message urging rioters to go home, and he sent a tweet describing the attack as the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. As outgoing president, Trump said in the aftermath of the attack that those who broke the law would pay. He's since changed his tune, falsely claiming that rioters were hugging and kissing the police and describing them as hostages and unbelievable patriots. Trump has promised he'll pardon at least a large portion of the rioters and vowed to free the January 6 hostages as one of his very first acts in office. 2020 election. Biden won the 2020 election. Trump lost the 2020 election. Nevertheless, Trump refused to concede and promoted an array of conspiracy theories about the election in the lead up to January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Many January 6 defendants have described themselves as gullible idiots for falling for Trump's lies about the 2020 election, regretting that they did so much damage to their own lives because they could not sort out fact from fiction. But Trump continues to spread lies about the 2020 election, while his lawyers in the federal election interference case have tried to argue that the former president's 2020 election concerns were not unreasonable. Okay, economy. Electric vehicles. Biden has made increasing the availability and production of electric vehicles core to his presidency, using a combination of carrots and sticks to encourage electric vehicle manufacturing in the U.S. as he seeks to address climate change by slowly phasing out gas-powered vehicles. That will never happen. And the petroleum industry will make sure it never happens, because they make billions of dollars a year, right? But his administration has already slashed ambitious targets, cutting its goal for electric vehicle adoption from 67% by 2032 to about half that amount after pushback from auto industry and labor leaders. Oh, duh. Who saw that coming? Trump has centered Biden's electric vehicle efforts in his campaign as a threat to the auto industry and U.S. economy as a whole, pledging to repeal all of Biden's efforts in this space. He has said he is not against electric vehicles themselves, but has portrayed them as less reliable than gas-powered counterparts. Personal note: how many memes and how many pictures on Facebook have we seen of electric recharging stations run by diesel generators. That's right. Diesel generators are being used to power electric charging stations so people that own electric vehicles can charge their vehicles. Well, that really solved the problem, right? No. All right, housing. Biden has proposed a $10,000 tax credit spread over 2 years for the first-time home buyers to offset higher interest rates. To help increase the inventory of lower-cost homes, Biden has proposed a 1-year tax credit of up to $10,000 for middle-class families who sell a home that is below the median price in the area. He has also proposed building or renovating more than 2 million housing units and offering $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-generation homebuyers. I can't tell you how many stories I have heard from the Democrats, maybe even the Republicans, I don't know. Everybody's, championing the idea of affordable housing. We need more affordable housing. Here in the Charleston area, everybody that works in the food and hotel industry, Charleston's it's a tourist industry. It's huge. Charleston is a huge tourist place. Location, destination. That's the word I'm looking for. Charleston, South Carolina, is a tourist destination. And it rates very high. And so there's lots of hotels and there's lots of restaurants, and restaurant workers and hotel workers who make minimum wage or maybe just a little bit more than that, they can't afford to pay $2,000 to rent a room in downtown Charleston, right? They can't afford to pay housing costs because it's just too exorbitant. So what do? They have to live in outlying areas like Goose Creek, Somerville, Ravenel, places like 15 or 20 miles away where they can barely find affordable housing. And, several mayors, and we've been here since 2000, and several mayors have promised to, deal with affordable housing. Has it happened yet? No, absolutely not. What did Trump say about housing? A Trump campaign official said Trump would lower housing costs by encouraging the construction of new housing on the periphery of cities and suburban areas, and that is happening. Where land is cheapest, and cancel Biden's anti-suburban housing regulation. A Trump administration would also unleash American energy and rein in Biden's out-of-control spending to lower inflation and mortgage rates, the official said. During his time as president, President Trump initially sought to reduce barriers to building high-density housing, but in 2020, he spoke out against building affordable housing in suburban areas, saying he would prevent a dystopian vision of building low-income housing units next to your suburban house. Well, he's talking out of both sides of his head. Social Security. Biden says he wants no benefit cuts and would raise taxes on upper earners to fund the long-term shortfall. As the White House put it in its March budgeting proposal, the president believes that protecting Social Security would start with asking the highest income Americans to pay their fair share. Right, that'll never happen. The White House has also called for improving some Social Security benefits, including supplemental income for seniors and disabled people. On a side note, I heard that a senator made a statement saying that Americans need to quit feeling entitled to Social Security benefits. We're not entitled to that, he said. Wow, that just blows my mind. The federal government, I don't know what, in 1920, somewhere along the lines, they implemented taking FICA and Social Security benefits out of our paychecks. We had no choice in the matter. I may have, it might not have been 1920, so I don't, Google it. Whatever date it was, our federal government said you will pay funds out of your paychecks for Social Security benefits. And they've been robbing us blind. Our federal government has been stealing from the Social Security benefit fund for decades. Trump's position is muddled. In March, he said he doesn't favor any benefit cuts. I will never do anything that will jeopardize or hurt Social Security or Medicare. Days earlier, he was asked about the future of programs like Social Security and said that there's a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting. He has not proposed a plan to cover the long-term solvency issues of Social Security. Yeah, where's the money? His campaign wouldn't respond when asked if he prefers to address it by adding new revenues or spending less. Taxes. Now, these are campaign points. These are issues that our presidents or soon to be elected president is expected to address, right? Biden said he wants to unwind some Trump tax cuts. Biden wants to unwind the Trump tax cuts for Americans making over $400,000 and raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. His platform also proposes a $3,600 per child tax break for families, an $800 average tax cut for frontline workers, and a 25% minimum tax on billionaires. I'm sure the billionaires are they're gonna fall in line with that, right? No, they're gonna send their money offshore. They're gonna find loopholes to put their billions somewhere else where it can't be touched. Trump favors extending the Trump tax cuts if he is elected. According to a campaign official, major portions of that 2017 tax law expire at the end of 2025. Trade. No across-the-board tariffs. Biden opposes across-the-board tariffs, but favors some targeted tariffs, such as steel and aluminum from China, accusing the country of unfair trade practices. Trump proposes to impose a 10% tariff across all imported goods. Trump told Fox News in February that it could be 60%, maybe even more than that, on imports of Chinese goods. Trump is a longtime skeptic of trade deals. Well, all the people that are buying crap from Temu, they're not going to be happy about that, because all that cheap Chinese stuff that you can buy at Walmart through Temu is no longer going to be available, probably. Education. Biden supports more funding for public education, particularly in low-income communities, and universal preschool. Biden said during his most recent State of the Union address that he wants to expand high-quality tutoring and summer learning and increase teacher pay. Wow, well, that would be nice. My wife's a teacher, and I guarantee you she's not making bundles of money. Biden also supports affirmative action for college admissions, saying they strongly disagreed with the Supreme Court's June 2023 ruling, effectively gutting the practice. Trump wants to get rid of the education department and let local areas and, frankly, states handle education. In September 2023, Trump released a 10-point plan that included restoring parental rights, proposals relating to students' gender identity, and allowing for the direct election of principals. Trump also proposed incentivizing schools to eliminate teacher tenure, reinstating a commission focused on teaching U.S. history, and allowing for universal school choice. Trump cheered the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision. Student loan debt. Oh, here's a hot topic. Biden wants to forgive some student loans and make community college tuition free. He has said that while a college degree still is a ticket to the middle class, that ticket is becoming much too expensive. The Supreme Court blocked Biden's attempt to cancel student debt for millions of lower-income Americans and Pell Grant recipients, but his administration has taken other actions to cancel $153 billion worth of debt for more than 4 million Americans, per the White House. Trump has pushed for cuts to programs that assist with student loan forgiveness, but did suspend interest on student loan payments during the coronavirus pandemic. After the Supreme Court blocked Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, Trump said at a June 2023 campaign event that Biden's plan would have been very unfair to the millions of people who have paid their debt through hard work and diligence. Foreign policy. China. I know this episode's going a little long, but I think I kind of feel like these are important things that we need to think about. National security issue. Biden called Xi Jinping a dictator last year after a private summit meeting. The president views America's rivalry with China chiefly through a national security lens, as opposed to Trump, who tends to see it more in trade and economic terms. Biden has sought to fortify and expand U.S. alliances in hope of restraining China's power, notably through a pact with Australia and the United Kingdom that involves the sale of nuclear submarines to Australia. Biden has also struck a hawkish posture towards China when it comes to a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Biden has warned that the U.S. would respond militarily if China were to attack. The White House later walked back his remarks. Trump wants to hit China with high tariffs. He says U.S. workers have suffered under what he calls unfair trade practices that have benefited China. If elected, he said in an interview in February that he would impose tariffs of at least 60% on Chinese goods. Trump also plans to institute a 4-year plan to boost manufacturing in the U.S. so that the nation doesn't need to rely on China for crucial goods. And he says he would bar China from taking ownership of what he calls critical infrastructure in the U.S. At times, Trump has praised Jinping, calling him brilliant. Israel, Gaza. Biden wants to stop the war from escalating and broker a ceasefire that includes the return of hostages and ultimately leads to a two-state solution. He has pushed Israel to limit civilian casualties and protect the delivery of more humanitarian aid. Biden has been critical of Israel's execution of the war, and specifically of Prime Minister Benjamin, whatever his name is, Netanyahu, whom he has privately referred to as an a-hole. But he has not substantially shifted U.S. support for the Jewish state. He urged Congress to send him an aid package for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. President Trump said the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel never would have happened if he were president. Trump insists. He has pushed for a quick end to the war, telling conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt in April they have to get it done, get it over with, and get it over with fast. He has not said under what conditions Israel should agree to stop its military campaign, but he has also not suggested any support for Palestinians. His criticism of Israel has been limited to the struggles on the public relations front. He has not articulated his own plan for peace in the Middle East. Personal note, will there ever be peace in the Middle East? My answer, no. Has there ever been peace in the Middle East? No. NATO-U.S. alliances. Biden strongly supports NATO and international alliances. Biden made restoring international trust in Washington a centerpiece of his campaign against Trump in 2020. As president, he has championed NATO as a force for democracy and U.S. security, rallying the alliance to counter Russia's invasion of Ukraine and pushing it to add new members for the first time in years. Biden touts his warm relations with European and other allied leaders, and some of the largest crowds he has addressed as president have been in Europe. Biden has also defended the United Nations as essential to preserve peace, prevent conflict, and alleviate human suffering. Well, that sounds good on the surface. Trump's American First ethos is skeptical of any international obligations that might encumber American sovereignty or cost it money. Trump has repeatedly said he believes other NATO countries are essentially mooching off the U.S. by not spending enough of their own money on defense. Well, that may be a true statement, right? He has even threatened to pull the U.S. out of NATO. Similarly, Trump has a dim view of the United Nations and multilateral treaties like arms control agreements. The future does not belong to the globalists. The future belongs to patriots, Trump said at the UN General Assembly in 2019, underscoring his commitment to nationalism over internationalism. Trump makes friends everywhere he goes. Maybe, maybe not. Ukraine. Biden says Biden has been resolute in his support for Ukraine. His administration has provided Ukraine tens of billions of dollars in financial assistance and weaponry, keeping the embattled nation from being swallowed up by Russia. A constant refrain from White House officials is that the way to end the war is for Russia to withdraw its forces, something Russian President Vladimir Putin shows no interest in doing. Until that happens, Biden says he is intent on shoring up Ukraine's defenses, warning that if Putin wins the war, he may be emboldened to move further west and attack NATO countries. Well, that sounds logical. Maybe that's true. Trump has said that if elected, he'd stop the war between Ukraine and Russia within 24 hours, without offering many details about how he'd do so. In September, he said he did not want to reveal his plan in order to preserve his bargaining chips. Throughout his presidency, Trump sought to remain on good terms with Putin. On the eve of Russia's invasion, Trump described Putin's recognition of two breakaway Ukrainian territories as very savvy and genius. Earlier this year, Trump embraced the idea of giving additional aid to Ukraine in the form of a loan rather than a gift. Oh, we all know that countries that we give billions of dollars to, our tax dollars, they are quick to repay us, aren't they? No, they are not. Social issues, abortion, Affordable Care Act, climate change, crime, federal workforce, immigration, marijuana. Oh, there's a funny one. As a presidential candidate in 2020, Biden said he would decriminalize cannabis use. In 2022, he ordered the Food and Drug Administration to review marijuana's potential medical benefits in an attempt to ease federal restrictions. And in a historic first, Biden used his 2024 State of the Union address to briefly mention marijuana reforms. He has also issued several rounds of mass pardons for people who have committed federal marijuana possession offenses, but he did not actually expunge the convictions as he has claimed as recently as his 2024 State of the Union speech, something that isn't possible without congressional action. As a candidate in 2016, Trump said he likes cannabis when used for medicinal purposes and believes the drug health benefits should be studied further. He has repeatedly said legalizing marijuana recreationally should be left up to each individual state. More recently, he acknowledged that legalizing cannabis is a pretty popular thing among voters. But Trump also questioned marijuana's helpfulness to people who use it, arguing without evidence that it does significant damage. His administration took several anti-marijuana actions, including rescinding an Obama-era policy that directed officials not to pursue marijuana-related prosecutions in states where the drug is legal. Interesting. Transgender rights. That is a hot topic. Biden supports transgender rights. The Biden administration expanded Title IX protections to include trans and other LGBTQ people, though it punted on addressing the hot-button questions of trans athletes and college sports. Biden has also repeatedly defended trans Americans from discrimination in his public remarks, issuing annual proclamations on Transgender Day of Visibility, urging Congress to pass the Equality Act, and using his first State of the Union address to say to trans people, "I want you to know your president has your back." President Trump. Trump is opposed to expanding transgender rights. Trump has said Biden's Title IX expansion is insane and going to destroy women's sports. He has vowed to use federal power to try to stop gender-affirming care for minors, which he equates with child abuse, impose severe consequences for teachers who discuss transitioning with students, and discourage the promotion of gender transitioning for Americans of any age. During his previous term, Trump's administration considered officially defining gender as an immutable biological condition determined at birth, which would make it impossible for people to change gender in the eyes of the law. Project 2025 has a lot to say about the transgender issue, transgender people. Tech. This will be the last one I read. Biden signed a bill into law in April that would ban the social media behemoth but not until after the election. Biden has made limited remarks about TikTok, but several top administration officials have warned that the Chinese government's access to TikTok's algorithms and user data makes it a serious national security threat. The new law, which forces TikTok's Chinese owner to sell it to a U.S. business or face a ban, comes 2 years after Biden banned nearly all of the 4 million federal workers from using TikTok on government devices. Despite his crackdown, the Biden campaign plans to keep using TikTok through Election Day to reach voters. Well, talking through the side of your head, both sides of your mouth. Wow. Politicians. Do you know how to tell if a politician is speaking? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me change that. Do you know how to tell if a politician is lying? Their lips are moving. Trump is inconsistent on the issue of TikTok. In August 2020, months before that year's election, Trump issued an executive order that would have banned TikTok in the U.S., citing national security concerns, but the court stepped in and halted the ban. 4 years later, as Biden prepared to sign the tough TikTok bill into law, Trump flip-flopped on the issue. Trump posted on Truth Social that young voters should know that crooked Joe Biden is responsible for banning TikTok, and that he's doing it to help his friends over at Facebook become richer and more dominant. Then in June, Trump joined TikTok, posting a video of himself attending a UFC event and calling it an honor to be on the app. Truth Social. Are you a member of Truth Social? I've gotten several invitations, and to date I have deleted them. I'm also not a member on TikTok. I know that several people in the Second Amendment, gun education, gun safety community use TikTok to get their message across, and I know they're reaching a whole lot of people. So hopefully TikTok is a social media portal that is positive in that regard. Okay, so this site from NBC News talks about all of these issues, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my display caption so that you can see it, right? Here it is. NBC News. I know it's a liberal rag, right? It's a liberal news agency, so take all of this with a grain of salt and do your homework. Do your homework. Research it. And what's funny is I tried to get Copilot, which is an AI engine from Microsoft. I tried to get Copilot to give me a side-by-side comparison of campaign promises by Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And guess what? AI balked at it and said, nope, I'm not stepping into that. You're going to have to rephrase the question or talk about something else. So I thought that was kind of humorous. So anyway, here we go. This is the website. www.nbcnews.com politics 2024-Biden-Trump-stance issues let's go look here. Let's see what are President Biden's campaign promises. Oh, here we go. What is the comparison between Trump and Biden with regards to campaign promises, right? And so here's a whole list of videos, and here's the one right here. Biden and Trump, compare where they stand on key issues. Okay. So anyway, I hope that this information has been helpful. I hope that while it probably has not swayed you or changed your mind with regards to who you've already planned to vote for, I wanted to give you some specific information about campaign promises, what's been kept, what hasn't been kept, who these people are, who Joe Biden is, who Donald Trump is. And like I said, turn this off. My 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 desire or my purpose for this podcast episode on Liberty and Gun Rights podcast is to discuss the race for president in 2025 and to let you know about Project 2025 that the Republicans are implementing, have already begun to implement should Donald Trump become president in January of 2025. Anyway, I think our nation is in trouble, even if it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden, either one of them. I don't think either one of these people should be the candidate for president in 2025. But that's my opinion for whatever it's worth. I know you can take my opinion and maybe $2 and get a cup of coffee at Waffle House, maybe. I don't really know if my opinion really ranks up there with the opinions of lots of other podcasters and social media influencers. Right? So, thank you for the privilege of your time. I hope I gave you something to think about. Our podcast is hosted on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Be sure to share our podcast with your Second Amendment friends, family, and coworkers. You can contact us at Liberty Gun Rights Podcast. That's proton.me. That's Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. And while I'm talking about that, I want to say that I'm always looking for guest speakers on my podcast. If you are a Second Amendment activist, if you are if you're into anything related to the Second Amendment, whether it be gun rights, gun education, training, if you're into reloading, if you're into accessories, if you train women shooters, if you train male shooters. I mean, I've had several trainers on my podcast that shared their programs with us and the importance of training, right? So I'm always looking for guest speakers on my podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker, write to me at Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm sorry it lasted so long. And goodbye for now.